Hey, what's up DIYers? Mike Borders with the Mike Borders channel. Thank you for watching. In today's video, we are working on my dad's 1987 Gravely riding mower. It's the 18G with the Kohler engine. I am so honored and excited to be working on this mower. This is basically a classic or collector. And in today's video, we are going to show you the proper and safe way on how to adjust your forward and reverse clutch. Let's get started. And DIYers, hey, a quick break in the action, and right then and there, that is the exact point on the hill that the mower basically gives up and can no longer move forward up the hill. And two things are happening in this moment. Again, the tractor coming to a complete stop and not being able to continue, and my dad raising his hands to tell us, aka the camera crew, that that's as far as the mower will go up the hill. DIYers, it is time to get that forward clutch adjusted and reset. DIYers, here we are, and in front of us is my dad's 1987 Gravely mower. This is the professional 18G, and believe it or not, my dad is the original owner and only owner ever since 1987 until present. In other words, this Gravely mower has been in the family for many decades, and I remember it as a kid. And you will not be surprised to hear this because Gravely mowers are incredibly well engineered and put together and long lasting. It still runs great today. However, this is not my dad's primary mower. He has a newer and modern Gravely zero turn mower, which is the primary. However, this serves a secondary purpose when the zero turn is in the shop because this still mows and it does a good job doing so. However, the primary purpose for this mower that my dad uses it for is snow plowing the driveway in the winter. And when it does that, it does a great job. And before we head into the garage and get started, let's go back in time to 1987 where we can take a look at a photo of me sitting on this exact mower during the summer of 1987, shortly after it arrived on property. Here we are back at the Gravely. Shifting gears to my dad's zero turn, and here is the owner's manual from, again, 1987. And section 4.13, servicing the forward and reverse clutches. Go ahead and read the top note. And it's only 4 steps. Step number 1, stop the engine and place the direction control lever in the neutral position. Back to the mower, and referencing my dad's 87 18G model, it has this large handlebar that extends upward from the transmission linkage, and by pushing it forward, it can actually be locked in the forward detent. However, again, step 1, we want it in neutral. And if we push it too far back, it'll go in reverse. And again, that's not what we want. We want it in neutral, as you see right here. In the event that you operate your forward and reverse via the foot pedal, go ahead and configure the foot pedal so it's in neutral. Back to the owner's manual. And on to step 2, raise the rear fender. Here we are to the back of the Gravely, and again, this entire panel that the seat is bolted to and covers the entire engine area and under portion of the mower, we are going to carefully pull up and allow it to be locked in place with the slide lock. To a different camera angle, standing behind the mower and above and coming in. On the left hand side right there is your reverse clutch. And coming to the right side, we have our forward clutch, as you see right there, and all of the moving parts, including that red bar, the threaded stud, the jam nuts that we will be working with as we work through the project. And this entire unit up here, this is our seat sensor, and it looks like it's making good contact. Back to the manual, on to step 3. Measure the clearance in the slot. The correct clearance is 0.030 inch or 0.76 millimeters to 0.060 inch or 1.5 millimeters. Time to grab our feeler gauge. And I did just that, went and grabbed the feeler gauge, and DIYers, down below in the comments and description will be a link on where to purchase this exact feeler gauge. And again, in our case, our slot clearance is 0.030 inch to 0.060 inch or 0.76 millimeters to 1.5 millimeters. And the largest this tool goes up to is 0.040 or 1.00 millimeters. That's not directly dead center because dead center would be 0.045, but 0.040 is awfully close to dead center, and 1.00 millimeters is awfully close to dead center from the 0.76 and 1.5. So that is the tool we are going to use. Back to the mower and looking down at the forward clutch and assembly and grabbing the feeler gauge. Again, in our case, 0.40 or 1.00 millimeters is the largest sleeve. And we are going to ever so carefully shift this in place in between the clutch pad and plate. That's rusted in our case. Yours is probably or likely rusted, being from the 80s. And DIYers, as you can see, I literally cannot put this inside or in between the pad and hard mounted plate. And that immediately tells me that, again, this is out of adjustment and it's not going to fix itself. Back to the manual, and step 3 is complete. However, as you just saw in step 3, we could literally not slide that 0.40 inch feeler in between the clutch pad and the plate. So step 3 is kind of a wash because it's so out of alignment. So with that said, on to step 4. This is where it might get a little tricky, and we are going to do our best to clear it up and help you out. Adjust the bolts which go through the flange on the axle bearing retainer so that the forward reverse clutch springs are straight up and down when the clutches have 0 clearance. Lock the bolt in place with the jam nut. Loosen the jam nut which holds the slide rod bushing in place. Adjust the bushing on the slide rod until the clearance is correct. Lock the bushing in place with the jam nut. Back to the mower and looking directly at the forward clutch and housing and linkage. And again, step 4 reads as follows. Adjust the bolts which go through the flange on the axle bearing retainer so that the forward/reverse clutch springs are straight up and down when the clutch has 0 clearance. However, in our case, again, we are referencing at this very moment and adjusting the forward clutch, not the reverse clutch. So we are going to reference this spring right here, verify it is not aggressively offset, which it looks good. We are now going to direct our attention to this red bar that extends out from the bottom portion of the clutch housing all the way up to the threaded stud, where it is secured in place by that outer 7/8 nut and the inner 3/4 inch jam nut. And at this time, we are going to loosen those nuts. And I will start by coming in with the 3/4 inch wrench and properly place it on the 3/4 inch inner jam nut as shown there, followed by the 7/8 wrench onto the outer nut. And again, we are going to loosen these up. And DIYers, as you loosen these up, do your absolute best not to damage any parts or wiring in the surrounding area where you're working. And as you can see, the outer nut is loose. I'm going to back that out and verify that the inner jam nut can be backed out. Let me give you a better view. Now to a closer view of the, again, inner 3/4 inch jam nut and the outer 7/8 nut. And what I'm going to do is turn the inner jam nut clockwise, and that's going to feed it in on the thread closest to the engine or center portion of the tractor. As you see right there. And from here, I'm going to carefully spin the 7/8 nut until this gap right down there in between the clutch housing pad and the hard mounted plate is 0 or 0 clearance or gap between the two. I'll do my best not to get in your way. Again, we are referencing down here and turning this 7/8 nut until that gap is 0 or the two parts are flush. And as you can see, there is no longer any gap in between the clutch pad and plate. And from here, we are going to begin ever so carefully and slowly turning the outer 7/8 nut counterclockwise and out on the thread. And in return, it's going to allow this bar right here to feed away from the center portion of the engine and out toward you or the tire area. And at the same time it does that, you will go down below with your feeler gauge. And again, in our case, 0.040 inches or 1.00 millimeters. And once we can slide that feeler gauge into that gap, we are going to no longer adjust this. We are going to go inside and thread the jam nut out and flush with this bar and lock the adjustment in place. And no easy way to do this. I'm doing my absolute best to stay out of your way. And again, just adjusting it counterclockwise ever so slowly and carefully. And going down below with the feeler gauge until I can slide the feeler in between the gap. And I'm starting to be able to slide it in. Check that out. Look at that. You don't want it aggressively wide open. You do want a little bit of touching or tension on either side, as you see right there. And that is perfect. I'm going to carefully slide it out, followed by coming in here and turning the inner 3/4 jam nut counterclockwise and threading it back down the stud and out toward us. And once that's secured, I'm going back to the 3/4 inch wrench and 7/8 wrench and securing both of these nuts in place to lock in that proper adjustment. Coming in with the 3/4 and 7/8. And DIYers, that is tight. I've now focused in on the clutch assembly with the proper gap, and I'm going to come up to the forward and reverse transmission handlebar that my dad's 18G model has, and I'm going to shift it into forward. And neutral, and reverse. Forward. And DIYers, I believe that adjustment is just what we needed. Time to start the engine and test it. However, real quick, a closer view of the forward clutch that we just adjusted, and again, the feeler gauge in with the 0.040 feeler, as you see here. And this bar properly adjusted and locked in place with the upper 3/4 jam nut and 7/8 nut. We are properly adjusted. However, I'm going to shift the camera over, and DIYers down below will be an additional link on how to properly adjust your brake. And if I go up to the brake pedal and push it, you will notice this little brake housing or assembly is similar to that of an oil filter wrench, as it just grabs a hold and hugs that inner part. As you see right there. Pretty cool, right? To the back of the engine, carefully release the lock lever and lower the cover. To the side of the Gravely and referencing the transmission or shifter bar, as you see here again, yours might be the pedal. I want to show you that the tension into that forward detent is still there, and you want that. As you see right there, there's a little tension or a little hump to hop over and into the forward and lock detent. As you see right there, you do not want that loose. For example, if you don't feel that tension right there, where you have to begin adding additional friendly pressure to push it into that forward detent, it's too loose, and you are not properly adjusted back at either your forward clutch or your reverse clutch. So again, ours is good, as you see right there. It's now in neutral. We'll start the engine and test it. There's a lot more forward power, more momentum, and the adjustment did the trick. DIYers, as you just saw, all went well, and the Gravely made it up the ramp and back to normal and ready for the winter for snow plowing. And I'm going to come in here, open up the compartment here that houses our battery, fuel tank, and electrical wiring and additional parts such as the relays. And right there is our brand new or newly installed ignition switch. And DIYers, what we were experiencing was the kill portion of the switch was dead or burned out. And once my dad started the engine and did what he needed to do with the mower, when it came time to turn the engine off, he would turn the key off, pull the key out, and the engine would still be running. So down below in the comments as well as the description section will be a link on how to properly and safely replace your ignition switch. You are working with the ignition switch and electrical wiring. There's a right way to do this and there's a wrong way to do this. Do not do it the wrong way. However, after replacing that, you get a new key and ignition, and the engine starts and stops as designed. Taking a step back, DIYers, that is it. We hope this helps. Hey, do us a favor. Below the video, you will see that thumbs up icon. Click on that, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Definitely ring your YouTube bell. That would be very helpful to us. We would really appreciate it. Thanks again for watching.